My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts.
This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. And we're going to talk tonight. I'm actually going to play a speech that I gave to the 912 project in Marietta, Ohio. And that was thanks to Norma, who is a friend of this show, who I owe a phone call to. And they asked me to come down there and speak with them. No specific topic. So what I chose to speak with them about, and this was the same night when I was getting hounded pretty hard about criticizing President Trump about the nepotism issue. And so I figured it'd be a good night to talk about what unites the DNC and what splinters the RNC. And it's probably nothing that you've never heard on this show. But again, this is going to be another good show if you have a liberal friend or if you have conservative friends who just don't get it. Well, this will be a good show for all of them to watch. Let's go ahead and kick the show off, and then we'll start the video. All right, let's see here. It's Wednesday night. I keep forgetting what night it is. The numbers are low. Make sure that you share the show, and make sure that you share it not just with people that you know would want to hear it, but share it with people that you think maybe don't want to hear it. They need to hear this regardless. And I also want to give a shout out. I forgot, Marcy, my friend Marcy, I grew up with, asked me to say happy birthday to her dad, Ed, and that was like 2 weeks ago, and I completely forgot. I think something came up that night, or I had technical difficulties, and it slipped right out of my mind. So, Ed, happy belated birthday, and well, you're a great American. How about that? In the words of Sean Hannity, you're a great American, and you have a great American daughter. So, it's interesting. Growing up in Arkansas, you do have, well, at least you used to. I don't know about now, but when I grew up in Yellville, up in the Ozarks, you really did have a sense of what made America. You know, I'm not talking about what makes America great, like apple pie and baseball and hot dogs. I'm talking about the patriotic belief in America and freedom and being able to just live and not have to worry about a government that is tyrannical. Now, I'm going to say something controversial, and that kind of goes along with that before we get started here. And I don't mean any disrespect to his family. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody else that has brain cancer, but I guess John McCain has been diagnosed with brain cancer. And you have to understand something before I say this to the American people. I have a vicious side of me if I was going to be working as a SEAL and doing that mission, or if I was in the FBI going through a doorway or following somebody. I'm a vicious person, man, and if you come up against me or my family, I have a vicious side to me. But overall, I'm not a vicious person. I don't go after people and try to belittle them or demean them or take advantage of something that may be happening to them, like an illness or such. But I will be honest with you. I think that destiny did us a huge favor, and I hate to say that, but John McCain is one of the biggest national security threats to this country, and he's been in office for way too long, and he is in league with people that I don't think this country should be in league with. So Arizona didn't want to vote him out. and destiny is going to take him out of the Senate. Now, Arizona, you need to get your stuff straight, and you need to start seeking for somebody that's not a Republican. Now, I know that's coming from a conservative. Here's what I mean by that. You don't need another establishment Republican. When I was in Tucson, Arizona, speaking to the Republican group out there, I met well over a dozen people that I think could do just as good of a job in John McCain's seat as he did. And by and large, if they did one thing correctly in their term, they would be doing a better job than John McCain. So I think there's plenty of people in Arizona that are not part of the establishment for the Republican Party. And when John McCain is officially out, I think that Arizona needs to step up to the plate and show the rest of the country that they now understand that establishment politics should be ended, and we should pick people who are great leaders. We want a conservative in there, yes. We want a free thinker in there, yes. But we do not need another establishment virus. We need a good, patriotic American that wants to do what's right for the country, not just his state, his pockets, or his opinions. So that's all I got to say about that. So here's what I'm going to do, folks. I'm going to start my video, and I want you guys again to share this and let people know that, you know, what you think. Let me know what you think about it, and you're going to get to see a little bit different side of me. I mean, you see me here talking every night, but you're going to actually get to see me speak as when I'm speaking to an audience. So, and I got to tell you, as far as the people that are there, the people with the Marietta, Ohio 912 project, Glenn Newman, and the rest of the folks that were there, just outstanding people. And I can't thank them enough. They literally, I told this before, they literally took an offering at the end of my speech, which I've never seen before. They took an offering, and it was pretty amazing. It touched me big time. And the reason they did that is because they saw what I was doing, that I was there. I didn't get paid to come there. I did it voluntarily. And you know, when you do things for the right reason and you're selfless about it, God will reward you, and that's what happened. So let's go ahead and get into this video, and again, share this as you will to the people that you know and love. This is my speech on July 10th to the Marietta, Georgia 912 project. I'm not exactly sure if I'm saying that right, but I think they'll get it, and you guys will get it. I went into the military right after I got hired as a police officer. So I was there for about 4 months. Went into officer candidate school in the Navy, and then went to BUD/S, graduated with class 218, and was a SEAL at SEAL Team 4, operating in and out of Central South America before 9/11. And then after 9/11, for some reason, we weren't being used for about a year, and the Air Marshal program opened up. So I jumped over and made the transition there. I kind of went in a little bit older, and I made the mistake of going in as an officer. So those two things kind of drove me to go over to the Air Marshal program. Was there for a little while, then went to work for a company called AMTI. Was probably the most amazing place I ever worked. It was full of former SEALs, Special Forces, Rangers, Marines. We had Coast Guard and Air Force Special Operations operators, and we went all over the country doing threat assessments for the Department of Homeland Security as what was called a site assist visit, and we were termed the assault group. So we would go in and tell all these different companies how they could be attacked if we were the bad guys, and how they could protect against those attacks. And this was the first time I was ever introduced to politics on a grand scale. Because those of you that are veterans or have worked for the government, when you're in the government,
you just don't see the reality of what's going on in and around the government until you step out of it. And when we were going around doing these very, very important threat assessments, all the targets were chosen by the politicians. We didn't choose the targets. We went there and told them where they would have a risk of being attacked. And it wasn't uncommon for us to go, say, to Florida and do a threat assessment on an orange juice facility when there's one of the biggest propane factories right across the street. But one of the governor's cousins or friends owned the orange juice facility. So that's the way I learned about the reality of government. I was there for a little over 3 years doing these threat assessments and teaching a system called the Soft Target Awareness Program, which I created, to take what we were doing and then go even further, where we were going and meeting with managers of different sectors, the educational sector, the religious sector, the tall buildings, stadiums and arenas, malls, several other sectors of society that are just soft targets by the nature of what they do. You can't really harden a church, you can't really harden a mall, because nobody would be able to go there and therefore the business would collapse. So we would bring those managers in, all the different managers, maintenance or facilities, the salespeople, the general managers, and we would have them target themselves from an attacker's point of view. And then we would turn around and help them to build defenses that cost nothing. And it was a pretty amazing course, if I don't say so myself. I'm actually just finished writing a book about it, which will be out here pretty soon. And I was again introduced to politics because President Bush, 43, sent his undersecretary of education, I don't remember her name, to come there and do an assessment of the course. Now, this course was a part of a presidential review, so it would get reviewed every month by the president, or 2 weeks or every month, and they would look at the numbers and look at what people were saying about it, and it got rave reviews. So this Secretary of Education shows up, Undersecretary of Education. She shows up, and she walks out of the class within the first hour. And I was excited for her to be there because I thought, well, here's somebody in government underneath President Bush who I was thinking was, loved this. And then she wrote a report, and I got to read this report. And it just blasted the course because it said we were teaching people to be attackers, and it was politically incorrect and unfair to Muslims. And she spelled I don't know how many things wrong and had bad grammar throughout the whole thing. Now, I'm from Arkansas. I don't really take that seriously, the grammar part of it. But when you're an undersecretary of the Department of Education, you would think that you would at least get that right. So, nope, she didn't get that right. So I was drawing on the experience that I had doing the site assist visits. I again saw this. And so I left there and went in the FBI. Nothing could have prepared me for the incompetence I saw in the FBI. Now, there's some great warriors in the FBI, and I'm talking about guys who go out like myself and Mr. Hoagland back there. I'm talking about people who are warriors for freedom and patriots, and their job is to defend freedom. But by and large, they are the minority. Communists are really the majority in the DOJ and the FBI. Now, that would probably surprise you that I would say that. They don't term themselves communists, but they follow every single thing that communists say. They say, oh, well, I'm more socialist or I'm democratic. Well, you're communist if you support a communist ideology, whether you identify with it or not. A transgender person can identify being a male. They still have the DNA of a woman, or vice versa. Well, it's the same thing with somebody who completely supports a communist agenda. If they say, well, I don't identify with that, well, your DNA still says that you're a communist. So the FBI was very interesting for me because I dealt with politics constantly in there. And I eventually worked my way over on a criminal squad, and then worked my way over to the Joint Terrorism Task Force, where I was in charge of their special events program. Now that sounds like, I planned parties, but that's not what we did. The Special Events Unit is responsible for coordinating all the threat assessments, the operations orders, and liaisoning with other agencies, private entities, and the FBI, and getting them all on one page. In New York City, that never really happened because the NYPD hates the FBI, and they're so full of organized crime, it's unbelievable. And the FBI is so full of incompetence and this socialistic view of America that they didn't ever try to bump up against the NYPD. So I got to see an incredible side of politics at that point. But my job there was to go in and do all these things. I was the first FBI agent on the scene for when Sully landed his plane in the water. Me and another guy actually pulled the first 2 passengers off the Circle Line ferry to determine whether or not it was a terrorist strike. I'm the guy who told Sully that everybody was alive, although in his book he says it was his union rep. That was me. I was the second FBI agent on the scene for the Times Square bomber, Faisal Shahzad, that failed, thank goodness. And so I've been around all these different things. I coordinated the security from the FBI standpoint and liaison with the NYPD for Times Square for New Year's in 2010. And for 3 years, I was the liaison, the coordinator from the FBI side of the house for the United Nations General Assembly, which is the biggest annual meeting of, I would have to say, Satan's realm that you would ever want to see in your life, but more communist, narcissists, psychopaths, more than any insane asylum show up there every year. They don't solve anything. I once sat in a room and watched over like 300 of the most wealthy people in the world sit in this room with Bill Gates, Harmy Karzai, and a couple other individuals that were on the panel. I don't remember who they were, but they were discussing world hunger. And not once did they talk about a way to fix world hunger. They only talked about raising money the whole time. So all these things started to build in my mind, but it wasn't until I got out, completely out 4 years ago, out of government service, I started a company and started doing crisis management. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of a cough over this week. So it was at that point when the Boston bombing happened, and Catherine Herridge from Fox News, who had done a story on us in 2010, I wrote her an email and said, I don't know if you remember me, you did a story on us, and I can give you some advice or information on what's going on, how the investigation's going if you need it. I wasn't trying to be on camera. 45 minutes later, I was at Fox News, and I did like a 6-minute interview. It was the scariest thing I ever did in my life. So that's how I got into media. That's where I started to see the reality, and I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together about what's really going on. So let's do this real quick. Let's show this sizzle reel that I have, and then I'll explain to you exactly what's going on.
But there are lots of ultra-fundamentalists in the world. Very few of them are terrorists. I mean, anybody who bombs an abortion clinic in this country is almost certainly a Christian fundamentalist. Very few Christian fundamentalists attack abortion clinics. And
I disagree with you there, because Christianity is not built on the same thing that fundamental Islam was built on. Christ didn't go through the world conquering like Muhammad did 1,400 years ago. So there is a fundamental difference there.
Okay, I'm not going to have a theological debate. I'm just making the observation that there are.
Well, you should make those statements then.
Okay. Will you let me finish?
We've been fighting wars now for over 13 years based on the hearts and minds, winning the hearts and minds of these different countries. If you want to see love and you want to see hope, go look at a baby's eyes. I challenge people, go look at a dog when you come home after work. That's love. That's devotion. If you want to defeat an enemy like ISIS, you have to go over there and eliminate them. You have to go take the fight to them and go to war.
Jonathan Gilliam, U.S. Navy SEAL. Thank you, my friend. Very good seeing you.
Good to be here.
Well,
Defense Secretary says we're going to carry out an investigation. Should we trust him on that?
No. I mean, we have to look.
We shouldn't trust the Defense Secretary.
I think that this Defense Secretary, Susan Rice, and the rest of the Obama administration, I'm saying this from a veteran standpoint, I like to stay as neutral as I can. They have shown, especially over the past couple of months, that we're not looking at professionals where we can measure them by the size of the details of their perfection. We're measuring them by the size of their mistakes, and that is amateur hour when you're sizing somebody up like that.
Stop playing, boo. Stop playing.
So here's the problem. You're an entertainer. I'm not.
Okay?
So what you're doing right now is you're ramping this conversation up and throwing stuff into it that I'm not making that point. We are one country, and we fought for this. People are dying for this every day, for the freedom for us to be Americans. I look at you as an American. I don't look at you as a black person. So why should you be pushing your color of your skin on me and expect me to be okay with that?
Okay, so
what goes through the mind of a police officer during those tense situations? What kind of training do they get? And what makes them decide to shoot or not shoot? So I went to training myself. The scenario I'm about to show you was designed by former Navy SEAL, FBI Special Agent, and CNN analyst Jonathan Gilliam.
Give me my money now!
There's not always a right answer for when to shoot and when to hold your fire. Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI and Navy SEAL, is my partner.
Does he got anything in his hands?
Can we come in, Sean?
No.
No, he doesn't have anything in his hands.
Okay, go ahead and go on in.
I'm telling you now, if you don't leave, I'm going to kill everyone in this room, including myself.
So why don't you put your other hand on the table?
I'm telling you, it's time to leave.
What would you do? Shoot or not shoot?
What's the problem? Why are you not responding to me?
Carol, we got to get this guy.
You want me to respond?
Okay, bam. You're dead. If he presents the threat to you, then you have the right to use deadly force, not just to protect your life, but to protect your partner or anybody else, because if he shoots you both, he can then go out and be a deadly, imminent danger to the public.
So that's a good example. Is this back on? That's a good example of the reality of what we're dealing with. So I started dealing with it in media, and I started realizing that these people are actors. When I was talking to Lisa Durden, who is a Black Lives Matter terrorist, she's not maybe a terrorist, well, her DNA says she's a terrorist because she supports Black Lives Matter, which is a terrorist organization. Remember, terrorism is the use of force, intimidation, and violence for a political aim. You can't meet that any better than Black Lives Matter, Antifa, by all means necessary, that's BAMN, which the mayor of Berkeley belongs to. So I started seeing that these people have agendas. They have narratives that they follow. Peter Bergen, the guy that was talking about how Christian fundamentalists go around bombing abortion clinics. He obviously has no clue about the reality of what a fundamental Christian is, and the fact that Jesus said, love your neighbor and turn your other cheek, versus Muhammad, who said, go out and kill infidels and lay them out in front of everybody to see. So there's a big difference there in the way the two religions are fundamentally. But those are people that are celebrated by the left. Now, I've spoken to liberals who were bothered by the fact that I called liberals leftist. And I do know liberals that, believe it or not, are effective thinkers. I often use this term, or this story, about the difference between conservatives and liberals. I don't even like to use this, where they say, I'm just a little to the left or a little to the right. That is actually something that you've been trained and indoctrinated to believe that you have to be this left or right. The reality is, to change these light bulbs in here, you can either get a ladder, or for some of these lights, you can get a long stick that has a suction cup on it. So a liberal may say, well, we need to get a ladder because it's safer and because the standards of the law say that we should probably do these with the ladder, but you can't go above this rung, and they're very emotional about the whole thing. Whereas, a conservative person may say, well, let's just get the stick that has a suction cup on it. If we need the ladder later, we'll get it, but let's just do this for speed's sake. And then they get into a big debate about that. Both solutions are effective, but neither person shows up to do the job and say, listen, I don't care if we use a ladder or a stick. Which one's closest? Let's go get that one and use it. But people don't do that. The difference between the liberals and the conservatives, however, and this is where I was talking about DNA a minute ago, and this is what I try to explain to liberals, is that they are much more focused on why they want that ladder. And they're much more unified in how they're going to get and use that ladder. The conservatives will end up taking that stick apart and beating each other up with it, or throwing insults at each other while they try to decide who's going to use the stick or who's better qualified. Or this person may say, well, you know, this guy, he knows how to use the stick to get the light bulb out, but he's not tall enough, so he's not going to be able to reach it. And then somebody will turn around and say, well, you're a fool for calling that guy too short. And then the conservatives get in a big fight. There's no unification. There's no understanding of how that, as a group, the conservatives get from point A to point B. And that's because, for one, they're free thinkers. So, whereas the liberals with their ladder, they're not free thinkers. They're robotic thinkers. They're told to think this way, and they just accept it, and they say, okay, we need to use the ladder, that's the way we do it. And they're very emotional about it, but they accept that that's the way they do it. And that's why they're so drawn to communism. Whereas the conservatives, in their free thinking, well, it's no different than when we were in the SEAL teams and you would get a group of guys who were the most highly trained men in the world to fight together. That's why it's called the teams. But yet you'd say, hey, I need 5 of you guys to go out back and build a pallet so we can put it on the C-130. That's where we have these big metal pallets that the plane that we load on there, we put all our gear on it. And before long, there would be a fist fight because 3 of the guys think they want to be in charge and they think that they know this way goes better and that way is better. And the reality is, it really didn't matter who did it the best. It's just that it got done. And that's the problem that we have with free thinkers, is that they cannot sit down together and say, what do we need to get done and what is the best, most efficient way we can get it? That's all. They don't even do that. This meeting should be packed. I know it's raining tonight, but any meeting, any time that conservatives have an opportunity to sit and talk together, it should just be packed. They should be flowing to these things. Because if you look at what's happening on the other side, they are and have been carefully studying. While conservatives have been out working hard, not protesting because they don't really have the time. They're making the most of their freedom. Raising families, having morals and ethics, and enjoying their freedom, and unfortunately being comfortable in their freedom. The liberals, or the people that are associated more with the communist side, they are out organizing, meeting, getting to know each other, developing tactics, going over tactics that have been taught to them since the 60s. And on top of that, they have another side operation going on, which is called Islam. And the Red-Green Alliance, which is fundamental Islam. It's not radical. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. It's not radical. It's fundamental. What's radical in Islam is a true peaceful Muslim that does not want to do any jihad and wants to assimilate with another country. That's radical. That's not what's taught in the Quran or the Hadith or any of their stories. So this Red-Green Alliance has been going on since well in the 70s when the Muslim Brotherhood, and they were doing, FBI was doing an investigation, and you probably never heard about this because it was never really promoted. They found a bunch of papers, and this led straight into the blind sheikhs case, where the Muslim Brotherhood was directly communicating with the Communist Party of the United States, which I can't even understand why that's legal. But the Communist Party of the United States, for some reason, is legal. But if you go back and you look at Hitler, for instance, one of Hitler's SS troops was led by the guy that was head of the Palestinians at that point. I mean, they latched themselves on to anything that is anti-Western. And the Red-Green Alliance, which is the Islamic and the communist. The Islamic is the green, the communist is the red. It is real, and if you start looking at it with these seeds I'm giving you, if you don't know this already, when you start looking at the reality of what's going on, you'll start to see individuals like Tamika Mallory, who's a black separatist, who's part of Black Lives Matter, and has attacked me on a radio show. I got up and walked off of the radio show because she was calling me a white racist pig, that was telling me that, telling people on the radio show that if you have dark skin, you can't be a racist. Only white people can be racist. Craziest thing you ever heard. Well, her best friend is Linda Sarsour, or however you say her name. And she is, if you don't know who she is one of the organizers of the Women's March all over the world, the one that was in Washington, D.C. She spoke there. She is a supporter of the feminist movement, but yet at the same time, she's somehow pro-Sharia law. But these people are too stupid and blind and too robotic to realize that the same woman that's saying women shouldn't be trod down upon, that women should have equal rights, she's the same one that supports Sharia law that says women should have to wear a burqa, they should know their place in the home. In certain cases, they're less than a goat in worth. It's the same woman. And her and Tamika Mallory are like this. So what you see is a molding of and a supporting of the Communist Party and the Islamic fundamentalist movement. That's why you can't say anything with the Democrats about Islam or in Hollywood or in any of this stuff. They don't have a solution for any of this stuff that's going on with the movement, the forward movement of fundamental Islam, both in the Middle East and in westernized countries. So I hope that you see, if you didn't know about this stuff, you should start looking into it because it's real. But I don't really want to concentrate on them. They're actually pretty easy to research. After you're exposed to it, which I was, and I'm exposing you to it now if you haven't been, it's actually pretty easy to go on, sit in front of the television, although I don't even sit in front of the TV anymore, but it's pretty easy to sit in front of the TV and see this stuff happening. To see the lies, identify the process in which this family tree of destruction is working together. And it's a family tree. You have the communist and fundamental Islamic red-green alliance. It's like one big branch that's woven together, or one big trunk. Out of that comes branches that work for the benefit of that trunk. You have city organizers, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know what they really do. Barack Obama was one of those. You have activists who are just another, that's just another name for communist operatives. You have Hollywood, who sets trends and decides what your children will wear and what is politically correct to say. You have the educational sector. You have mayors. You have city councilmen. You have state and federal congressmen and senators, judges, all of these people, along with their mouthpiece, mainstream media. And what they do is they use this family tree, and let's not forget the big money donors. Wall Street is all about this movement. It's no different than when Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky marched into Russia and made this movement happen. The same people that helped them, that thought they were going to get all this stuff out of it, some of them they kept, like the big money people. But all the activists, they just killed them afterwards because they weren't going to assimilate. These people are kidding themselves. So the same thing is basically happening here. That's it in a nutshell. Also, this one last thing about the communist side. They believe, if you don't know what true communism is, we could go through and poll everybody and see what you believe communism is. I doubt very many people here, because most people do not realize, communism is not a quest for dominance by a centralized government. Communism is a quest for utopia, a godless, government-less utopia. So that we all could work, and if you're in need, I give to you, and if I'm in need, you give to me. But we all work and we all take care of each other. Sounds kind of like what we have now, with the exception of if you're in need, it's my choice whether or not I give to you. And if I'm in need, you can choose to help me or not. But that's what their goal is to, by any means necessary, if you wonder where that name came from, Marx said, by any means necessary, you can get to this utopia and it's justified. So games, lies, political subversion, anything you can do to get people on board with overthrowing the bourgeoisie, which they had in that point in time, which for now it's the conservatives, and they utilize division of white people from everybody else. It's the most racist thing I've ever heard in my life, what's going on now, but they like it that way. It's all about division. Their goal is to get to this utopia. So if you didn't realize that about communists, it should make you see things a little bit differently, because it's very similar to Islam. Islam believes if they kill you, because you're an infidel, you're not a believer in Allah, and Allah is not the same God that Christians worship. But they believe if they kill you, that they're freeing your soul, and they're doing you a favor. And then you'll serve your time, and wherever they believe you'll serve your time, and then whatever will happen, so your soul can be redeemed. You see the similarities there? They all believe in some strange utopia that we get through force, not through choice. Now, let's push that to the side, and then I'll finish up here. Because this is the most important thing that you all should realize about yourselves and about the people out there that are free thinkers. First and foremost, you all are here and they're not, which says a lot about you. You are the Johnny Appleseeds of the modern era. You all are the ones that actually, as the founder of Apple said, you are the ones that will change the world. But you can't just leave here and do nothing. You have to walk out of this door and say, I'm not afraid to stand up to somebody. If a conservative comes down on me because I'm saying what's true, I'm not going to back down. But I'm not going to be nasty. I know the truth, so I'm going to allow them to dig a hole for themselves, and then I'm going to make sure I cover it up nicely and put some flowers on it for them. That's your job. You plant the seeds inside them, but don't be afraid. The biggest thing, though, you need to take out of here, though, is that we are not unified. There's probably people in here that may agree with me or may not agree with me. But the majority of people that are outside of here that are free thinkers would have no problem, which I've been arguing with people all day on Twitter. A big part of this thing that I'm doing, which I am sometimes wondering what exactly it is that I'm doing in media and all these different things. I've been arguing with people all day, conservatives, not liberals. Not one liberal has attacked me all day. It's been conservatives all day. Because I wrote a meme and I criticized Donald Trump, who I was supporting publicly when I host the Sean Hannity radio show. I'm a fill-in host when he's gone. And I announced on the Sean Hannity radio show, long before anybody else did when he was running, that I was behind him. I laid out for almost an hour why I was voting for him, why I was supporting him. I talked about his operational sense, the fact that he, on and on and on. People they forget about that stuff. I'm on radio every single week on the biggest within the top 3 radio shows in the nation. 17 million people listening. It's not uncommon for me every week to be arguing with a liberal on behalf of Donald Trump. I write one meme because I don't agree with the fact that he utilizes his daughter and his son-in-law in a position that we did not vote for, and in a position where not him, not them, but in 4 years or 8 years, a nefarious, power-hungry politician could utilize the same nepotism to undermine us, hide their power, and hide the movements that they're doing with people that have no problem doing whatever their father or mother wants. And so that's where I'm railing against this. So I've been dealing all day with nasty attacks from people who watch my show on a regular basis that you would think and support me daily when I'm saying what they want. But when I bring up something that they don't agree with, down comes the hammer and the gloves come off. I'm unfriending you. You're an F-bomb this, or you're that, and profanity here and slaying there. That's the problem with this country. The same people that will sit there and slur this and sling that are the ones that they're not out doing a show every single night that I do every weeknight, and I spend the majority of my day preparing for that show for the benefit of the people so that they'll know this knowledge that I have and they need. They're not the ones putting themselves out and getting threatened with their that people are going to come and kill them because you stood up for a cop who shot somebody 16 times as though you can overkill somebody who had a knife and was threatening people with a knife. I get death threats for this stuff. A Marine who was an immigrant from Somalia and became a Marine told me that he wished that, I'm not married and I don't have any kids, but he said he wished that my wife and my daughters would be raped and slain by ISIS before me. That Marine subsequently spent some time in jail and got kicked out of the Marine Corps. But the people that are arguing with me, they don't do this. They go to work, and then they come home, and then they get on their little phones, and they get these keyboard muscles. They have no respect. They think that they know everything. They think they know Donald Trump. They don't know Donald Trump. I know over a half dozen people that work in the White House. Majority of these people know nobody that works in the White House. But yet they're going to curse me and say, I don't know this and I don't know that, and Donald Trump's over here and she's over here. And I'm not demeaning the president that I support. But if you don't know him and he's an elected official, don't go the way that the Jews went when they were being led through the desert and they cried out to God, give us a king, give us a king. I guess it wasn't good enough that God himself was in front of them and in a cloud behind them. They wanted a king, right? So he gave them a king. And what happened? They put all their faith behind these kings and they were let down by every single one of them. If you elect a human being to an office, if you elect a dog, I would put all my faith in them. But because I love dogs. And they do everything usually that we want. But if you elect a human being to office, you should never trust them. And you should always hold them to standard. And if they say what you want to hear, you should hold them to standard doubly than what you would somebody who says kind of what you want. I hold Donald Trump, and this is the biggest compliment he should have. I don't know if he would take it this way. I hold him to a higher standard than I would ever have held Barack Obama. Because I didn't expect it from him. But this man, I expect it from him. Also, it is the greatest form of self-governance that the American citizenry can have. You put somebody in that office, they're not a celebrity. He is the man who's supposed to be managing this country. It's that simple. It's no different than if you're managing a Wendy's or McDonald's. If you don't do the job, you should be out of there. He's there to manage this country. I'm not going to celebrate him. I'm not going to worship him or anybody else in politics. If they don't do the job, and most people don't, their senators have been in office for 30 years, and our country is in the worst position it's ever been in. And people get excited when they walk in a room. They should be walking into a room like, it should be about that loud because they're like, I hope I don't get pummeled. Because they're all failures. The point of this whole rambling, first it's part of me venting because I'm angry because of this, but the reality is you all should not act that way. And when you talk to other people, you shouldn't act that way either. And if you can educate other conservatives that they shouldn't act that way either, that's probably one of the greatest seeds we can plant in anybody, is that you want to have you want to continue to have freedom, you want to have a great country, first thing you got to do is you got to be able to talk. You got to be able to have dialogue. You may disagree, but ultimately you should be able to sit down and say, yeah, you want this and I want this, but we both want that. How do we get to that? And if you can't do that, we might as well stop having children and start partying, because the communists are going to take this country over. And if you think it's going to be a utopia, that whole thing is a lie. It's really just a ploy for people to get power. Exactly. So history is our greatest teacher. History has shown every single one of us that communism doesn't work. It ends up being a dictatorship or a fascist leader. And it also shows us, unfortunately, that whenever a population becomes free, they become comfortable, and then they die. We're the greatest nation in the history of the universe, and we have the opportunity to continue to be that way. But only if the free thinkers learn how to communicate, learn how to stand up against the left. And third thing I'm going to leave you with is learn the steps of subversion. You got to look up subversion. Go look at Yuri Bezmenov, who was under the Reagan administration, he defected from the USSR. Back then, 30 or 40, 50 years ago, he was talking about subversion and the steps that you take to subvert a country. Everything he said has come to fruition, and nobody even knows his name. So when you all leave today, you got to realize, I served in many, tremendous amount of capacities in this country, always serving, but I've never stopped serving. I grew up with nothing. If I die with nothing, I grew up in the hills of Arkansas with nothing, dirt poor. But if I die with nothing, but I served my entire life, I'm okay with that. I'm not here to be popular. I'm not here to make friends with everybody. But if you continue to serve with the same heart, the people that are in this room right here, we can change the world. I can guarantee it. I can guarantee it. So, God bless you all. Thank you for showing up here today. And just remember that as you walk out here today, remember those key points that I told you, because that is what is guiding this country down the wrong path, and is what is keeping us from pushing back and walking down the right path. Thank you all.
All right, folks, there you go. That was my speech for the Marietta, Ohio. I keep wanting to say Georgia. Marietta, Ohio 912 project on July 10th. And what a great group of people that was. And I hope you got something out of that. I hope that you're able to share this with people and that they actually see reality as I laid it out there. I mean, listen, these are brief overviews. You could have a scholar come in and talk about things on a much deeper level. But I really honestly don't think that the majority of people in this country need to know the depths. Well, no, I take that back. They need to know the depths, but they're not gonna dig into it. They're not going to go and research things themselves. As we discussed yesterday, and we had an intense discussion about children and who influences them. They're going to look towards the shiny thing on stage. They're going to look towards the young and popular person, and basically the people that have zero experience whatsoever. And so they're not going to get that deep into the weeds about this. But in a lot of ways, it's okay if they grasp the concept of what's happened what's happened in this country. The subversion that's happened, the DNC, the way it has fallen to the Communist Party, the way this country, the way the Republican Party is so splintered and led by really incompetent and nefarious leaders in the establishment. And overall, folks, most people just do not know that the political parties are private companies, and they don't realize that how these different groups work together and why they work together, such as the media, the activists, the politicians, and so on and so forth. If they see the picture, say I'm a big picture person. I'll give you an example. You know, I talked before with everybody about the fact that I've written a book. It went through the first series of edits. It comes back to me, and now I have to go through the details in which they edited and approve or not approve or add things that they want me to add or take things out, rearrange things. And it's a very detail-oriented process. Now, I admittedly am not a detail-oriented person. That's why, from a leader standpoint, the type of leader I am, I see things from the 30,000-foot level. Now, if I plan them, here's the interesting thing about me. I see it from the 30,000-foot level, and I know that this needs to go there, and that needs to go there, and we need to have this, and this person needs to be doing that, and I see the whole thing. I would rather then have managers that know more than I do to take care of this part and make sure that person does this, and that person's instructed over there, and then manage those people and manage the vision. That is what the vision is what I tend to manage. However, as people saw when I did my SEAL training in West Virginia, and Dave Robinson can attest to this, I get very detail-oriented when I've done every step of the thing. And then in that case, I'm like, you need to do this, 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 and this. And I'm the one in charge of it. But when it comes to editing and the edits come back and somebody else has looked at that, it's difficult for my brain to process it and then go through and make sense of it, because it takes me too close to where I can't keep the vision from far away, like the 30,000-foot view. That's the way I think most people look at things when it comes to problems. I think they look at, they say, okay, just give me an overview of how the country, the shape the country's in, like the useless State of the Union address every year by the President of the United States. That's the most pomp and circumstance, ridiculous nonsense that you see every year, where they all clap and they act like, well, we're really doing things, we're making changes, and we need to do this, when it's the same people that have been up there for 30 years, some of them, and they're doing nothing. So if you could share that speech, this show, any of my shows, get people over here so we can give them that brief overview. There'll be some shows where we go in deeper detail about it, and some shows where we just brush over it. And I think you'll start to see that that we are, as I discussed with Norma and the rest of her friends there in Ohio, we are planting seeds in people. We are the modern day John the Baptist, the modern day Johnny Appleseeds, where we are baptizing people in the truth. We're planting seeds inside of them so they can grow. And we are cultivating patriotism and an awakening. Now, every once in a while, you'll get like a great season like happened last election process, where you get the strongman, Donald Trump, that comes through, and he does an amazing thing, and you just have an amazing crop season, I guess you could say. But that's only going to happen every now and then. And as I pointed out last night, Donald Trump is more of a dam for a river, so that we can then get down below the stream and start planting seeds all over the place and change the entire tide of the river. We can build things that split the river and take it over here or get rid of this, whatever, while it's dammed up, but that's not going to last forever. So the other thing I wanted to bring up real quick, and let me just see what you guys are saying here. The other thing I want to bring up is let me turn on Twitter back here real quick so I can see what you guys are saying. Otherwise, I got to keep looking over my right shoulder. Now, don't forget to share this on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. If you don't follow me on YouTube or subscribe to my channel on YouTube, subscribe to it. If you don't follow me on Twitter, follow me. And if you don't like my page on Facebook, go like it. So you got all this stuff. It's all this stuff you got to do. Now, real quick before we end the show, it appears as though, and now see, I criticize Donald Trump for the nepotism, and I don't hesitate to do that. I criticize his administration because all these people that are still in the White House from the Obama administration should be gone. And I hold President Trump accountable for that. He's number one there. But let me give him some, this is not criticism. This is, I think, something that President Trump, every once in a while he pops out and says exactly the right thing. And he said today, I don't know who he said this to. He said, talking about Jeff Sessions, who I have had, I don't want to say my doubts about Jeff Sessions, but there's something going on there with Jeff Sessions that doesn't make me feel positive. Same thing with quote-unquote Mad Dog Mattis, who has not really done much since he's been in the military and insists on continuing this whole transgender nonsense and the social experimentation. That's not a mad dog to me. That is a social justifying sloth is what that is. So until he bucks up and does what he's supposed to, General Mattis is not getting – I'm not going to be excited about General Mattis, and I've not been excited and was very close to criticizing for a long time. Now I'm letting it be known that I'm not pleased with this guy at all. And it didn't surprise me because he came up as a general during the Clinton and Bush and Obama era. So, but today Donald Trump going towards Jeff Sessions, he says, how do you take a job and then recuse yourself, Trump asked rhetorically. If he had recused himself before the job, I would have said, thanks, Jeff, but I'm not going to take you. Wow. I mean, that's just wow. Now, I wish that President Trump could hear this, because he needs not make the same mistake with this Christopher Wray character. We need an FBI agent to run the FBI. We don't need another DOJ. You see the destruction that comes out of the DOJ? First, it was Loretta Lynch. It's always been bad coming out of the DOJ, but the DOJ is full of corrupt and politically minded, political appointed attorneys. And when you put those attorneys in the FBI, you lose the separation that needs to be there. The FBI does not need to be working for the DOJ. They need to be working in conjunction with the DOJ. And that's the problem. The DOJ they're lost. It's been completely subverted. I think the DOJ, everybody there should be fired. I feel the same thing about all the generals in this country. Of course, I feel the same way about the congressmen, the senators, majority of judges. They should all be gone, and we should reboot this whole program. But the DOJ is completely gone. It's subverted. Majority of people in there are not just liberal, they are communist. They literally believe in a communist platform. So how can you take an attorney out of there, somebody that was loyal to Chris Christie, who has shown that he doesn't give a crap about the American people. Chris Christie, who likes to get up there and when he was doing the debates, you could tell the guy just loves himself. Loves himself. I don't even care about the guy's weight or anything like that. Chris Christie, the fattest thing on Chris Christie is his ego, not his body. I don't care how fat he is. It doesn't have anything to do with whether or not he's a great leader. Chris Christie is a horrible leader. And he is a loudmouth bully who doesn't care about people. And you're going to take the guy that was his attorney for the Bridgegate case that got him off on that, when that guy, Chris Christie, should have been charged with something out of that. And the same with all the rest of the people that work for him. But this Christopher Wray shows that he's an unethical attorney because he worked to get Chris Christie off. He played the political game. And he is a DOJ attorney. He's no different than Sessions. He's no different than Mueller. He's no different than Comey. And now you're going to put him, President Trump, in charge of the FBI. If you took the same attitude that you have right here, sir, the same attitude where you're talking about if Jeff Sessions had actually, actually told him that he was going to recuse himself before the actual sorry, I just lost my train of thought because I got a phone call here. If he would have told him that before he actually took the job, then he wouldn't have hired him. If President Trump took the same tone, if he took the same tone with Christopher Wray, and he was thinking with the same mind as he's thinking clearly with now, what you would see is that there'd be no reason to hire him. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, sorry, I got a little bit lost there because I got a phone call. So, folks, that is, it goes right along with this speech that I just gave. You cannot drain the swamp if you are just simply recycling people. You just can't. So, sorry, I got a little distracted because I got a phone call. So, anyway, I think that's about where I will leave it tonight. And I will finish the show up with the Truth Zone before I get any more distracted. And plus my iPad just crashed at the same time and went back for some strange reason to the very beginning of the show. Hold on, folks. Stand with me. See how technology works? The whole thing goes crashing at the same time. And I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm running blind here. Stand by. We'll do it live, in the words of Bill O'Reilly. I don't know what the deal is with this iPad. It does this from time to time, and it gets locked up. So what I usually do is, that doesn't really work, but I'm telling you, Apple, you make horrible products now. Not going to lie. They're great when they work, and then they just go, and then they don't work anymore. All right. We'll go to the Truth Zone now. I guess this is about the right time for that anyway. Let's see here. I'll try it one more time. See if the iPad brings it up. And no. It is stuck on 1 minute and 42 seconds to the beginning of the show. All right. Okay, folks, let's go to the Truth Zone. Sorry, I went rambling there for a second, and then everything just fell apart in the show. All right. Yeah, thanks a lot, Putin. Actually, you know, the truth is, it's not the Russians. Listen, I've said this over and over again. It goes right along with the speech that I gave. Everything that the American people are told, by and large, by politicians. I mean, think about this, folks. I don't even have to say this. I don't have to give you many examples. All you got to do is sit back and look at what all has taken place in the past 30, 40, 50 years since you've been alive with the federal government and with the mega rich and now with Silicon Valley and all these different groups. Has your life changed? Has it gotten better? Have things ever been solved to the point where you're like, man, they took care of that insurance? Or, man, they just take care of veterans. It's unbelievable. No, it doesn't happen, folks. It doesn't happen because they don't want to work themselves out of a job, which is ridiculous, but that's how they get continuously reelected, because we don't put term limits on these people and we don't vote them out of office. So they continue to create these problems so that they can feed their constituents that have money that say, we need a medical bill because we got this whole new technology for medicine, so we should do something where we can make money off of that. It's a game, folks. They don't fix anything. And when it comes to this Russian hack, everything that you're being told, it's 180 degrees out from that. I've been saying it from the very, very beginning. What you're seeing is counterintelligence 101. They're basically trying to entrap the president. but they're doing it with foreign sources. The foreign sources that they can turn around and say, oh, it's the Russians. Because, no, they're not lying. It is Russians. It's Russian sources that work for the Democratic Party. I think there's more proof for that than there is for anything that the Trumps have done. And if we can't take a step back from the 30,000-foot view and look at this, and if we can't teach our children to seek out experts who actually know things, if we ourselves are constantly going to foxnews.com and it's like, here's a nipple slip article, or here's something about somebody who does home improvement shows, and they're all in disarray. There's not even hardly any real news on foxnews.com, and half the time, whoever's doing the editing over there, it's got grammatical errors all through the thing. If you are a professional news organization that the conservatives are turning to, and you can't even on your breaking news get the title right without repeating words, there's something going on there. And the fact is, it's just like the movie The Matrix. Every once in a while, you know, there's that black cat that walks twice through the screen, and you're like, what's going on here? When you see these things, folks, it's a gift for you. When somebody like myself comes up forward and shares the truth, it's a gift for you. Unfortunately, if they go against the Clintons, they typically end up dead. Not this guy. I long for that fight. I hope that you share this show. And as always, folks, keep seeking the truth. Don't play their game. Turn it around and play it on them. I'm Jonathan Gillum. Rico's over there staring at me. This is The Experts. And I'll see you tomorrow, same time. The truth has arrived.